Nene Badjan sangarango, oh nene, afana be Oslo de no engodia.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to today's news review. You live on Mamos Radio. I'm your host Rohi Konatige.
Welcome to Gambia Today News Review. Listeners, you're tuned into Mamos Radio on Mamos Media. It is Tuesday, 22nd of December 2020. I am NENEH with a review of the nation's top headlines coming to you live from Oslo, Norway. We begin with the Mamos Media article, Politics of Godfatherism and the Thai Story. The 2021 presidential election in the Gambia will be a critical, earth-moving and likely to be expensive affair. The nation is at a pivotal and authentically historical point. It is a national turning point, as it happens with revolutions. The nation is expected to turn with the times from the drab cannibal politics and despotic leanings and take a democratic trajectory. The choices are stark, the stakes are high, the anxieties are on the brink. Presidential aspirants for the 2021 contest are taking positions, and the electorate is being treated to a noisy, confusing, tribal and bloodletting marketplace. Everyone will have to choose their preferred candidates for president. In the current political season in the Gambia, we hear all sorts of stories in our politics here. The godfather is in politics and the godson, overriding consideration for power. Personal survival rather than politics for national development and patriotism. The godfather and godson politics of ambition and power. This has frayed nerves and subjected the people to fear and trepidation. Power, greed, and the get-quick-fatty syndrome have been identified as a significant causative factor of godfatherism politics in the Gambia. Listeners, we go on to the second Mamos Media article. Gambia Red Cross aims at alleviating human suffering, Secretary General. The Secretary General of the Gambia Red Cross Society, GRCS, Assan has said that the GRCS aims at alleviating human suffering by addressing some of the needs of vulnerable people through its unconditional cash transfer. Mr. Senghor made these remarks in his office in Carnifing during the launch of the unconditional cash transfer of about $6.4 million to be distributed among 2,000 vulnerable families across the country. He said the funding from the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, will be transferred to households in partnership with AfriCell's AfriMoney. He adds that each identified beneficiary across the country will receive $3,200. Quote, the package targets families that have their businesses affected by the state of emergency restriction measures, persons depending on daily labor as the only source of livelihood. Women-headed households with limited income, refugees, migrants, asylum seekers, and stateless persons. Differently able household heads that depend on daily charities from other people. Household heads with chronic illnesses, households affected by floods and windstorms during the COVID-19 pandemic, households affected by fire outbreaks during the period of the pandemic, and household heads living with HIV/AIDS, unquote, Senghor said. Listeners, we move on to the point article today. Court of Appeal acquits soldiers convicted of treason. The 8 soldiers who were convicted of treason recently have been acquitted and discharged by the Gambia Court of Appeal. Captain Yaya Bere Jammeh, Lieutenant Abdullah Jaju, and Lieutenant Yaya Jammeh were all acquitted and discharged on all counts by the appellant court. The judgment was delivered on Monday, 21st of December 2020, setting aside their 9-year jail term. The judges of the appellant court declared that the proceedings of the General Court-Martial were a nullity and thus their findings were void. This held that view after the prosecution failed to produce the written consent of the Attorney General as required by law before starting the case. The accused persons were alleged to have been members of a WhatsApp group dubbed Ajamat, or True Friends, meant to be a platform where they used to discuss their planned coup. Listeners, we move on to the standard article. NRP deputy leader calls Hamad a cankerworm. The deputy leader of the National Reconciliation Party has described his party leader Hamad Bah, who doubles as Minister of Tourism, as a cankerworm in President Barrow's cabinet and in NPP. Musa Sonko, who has no love lost for his party leader, said Hamad Bah's theatrics are undermining President Barrow's political agenda. Speaking to the Standard over the weekend, Sonko contended, quote, Hamad Bah is a cankerworm in President Adama Barrow's government and his NPP, yet President Barrow himself does not realize it. If Hamad Bah is really committed to the President Barrow's success, as he is claiming, what he should do now is to focus on the tourism sector and try to rejig the industry. A lot of people, as well as the country's economy, depend on tourism for survival. If that industry is dying, as a responsible minister, he should give it his all instead of following President Barrow, who is embarking on his constitutional duty, unquote. Listeners, thanks for tuning into Mamos Radio this Tuesday. Well.
Thank you, NENEH, for today's news review. Listeners, you live on Mamos Radio. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thank you, listeners. You live on Mamos Radio. I'm your host, Rohi Konetige, proudly sponsored by Unique Energy in the Gambia. Please stay tuned.
Good evening, listeners. I am your presenter, Sainabou Njie. Thank you for joining me on Mamos Radio as I take for after warnings by Chief Scientific Advisor Sir Patrick Vallance that the new mutant variant of COVID-19 could have spread across the country. The mutated variant of the coronavirus has spread everywhere, risking placing as the new COVID-19 variant continues to spread. The Telegraph says that Boris Johnson is planning mass testing at ports in an effort to get haulage over the channel after the UK pulled the ICE's actions. Scientists have told Prime Minister Boris Johnson that he must impose a national lockdown or risk a human disaster amid the new fast-spreading variant of the COVID-19, according to the over the world. The Independent writes that the UK has been isolated after more than 40 countries banned travellers from Britain, leaving Boris Johnson in a diplomatic bid to reopen the French border. Global markets have fallen amid the international alarm over the new COVID-19 variant that has forced dozens of countries to close their borders to the UK, according to the Financial Times. Thank you, listeners. That was the UK's national newspapers' front pages. Please stay tuned. After the break, we will take a closer look at the Daily Mail and the Metro. Thank you. Welcome back, listeners. Let's take a close look at the front page of the Daily Mail, which has headlined, "We're all heading for Tier 4. Science chief's warning as Witty says COVID hospital cases to reach April peak by New Year." The Daily Mail says the entirety of England could soon be heading for Tier 4 after warnings by Chief Scientific Advisor Sir Patrick Vallance that the new mutant variant of COVID-19 could have spread across the country. The paper says the comments by Sir Patrick put England on notice for a New Year lockdown. Turn to page 4 for more details. Also featured on the front page is the caption, "Royals Xmas Blunderland." Senior royals are accused by the Daily Mail of inadvertently flouting coronavirus regulations at the Christmas attraction in Norfolk. The paper says that the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and their 3 children mingled with Prince Edward, his wife and their 2 children at a themed woodland walk in Sandringham. It is in Tier 2 where the rule of 6 applies outdoors. Royal sources tell the Mail there was no intention of meeting up as a party of 9 and that the 2 parties had been given separate consecutive time slots for the event. The 2 groups were apparently spotted, as featured on the front page picture, mixing and chatting on several occasions, although the 9 royals were socially distancing. Royal sources tell the paper the families arrived and left separately, and any contact was inadvertent. Listeners, we now take a close look at the front page of the Metro, which has headlined, "Jingle Hell. Mutant COVID leads to travel ban from UK across the world. Log jam at Dover and panic buying as variant spreads around Britain." Jingle Hell is how the Metro sees it. It reports queues outside supermarkets and on the M20 in Kent as panic buying meets spot disruption amid fears over the new variant of coronavirus. The paper says worried shoppers hit stores at 6 a.m. on Monday and still found queues when they got there. Fears of festive food shortages have sparked the first Christmas panic buying sprees after 40 countries banned travel from Britain over the mutant COVID-19 strain, and the whole EU sealed its border from us. Shoppers are pictured waiting in line to shop at Morrison's in Whitley Bay, Tyne and Ware yesterday. Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged people to shop normally and said he had an excellent conversation with French President Emmanuel Macron to end a lorry logjam at Dover within hours. There is slow progress as depicted by the front page picture of police escorting lorries at Folkestone before the Prime Minister's call to Macron. But supermarkets said fresh fruit and veg could be affected unless France lifted its 48-hour blockade aimed at stopping the strain crossing the channel. This report continues on page 5. Thank you, listeners. That was the UK's national newspapers front pages review with me, Sainabou. Stay tuned to Mamos Radio for the rest of our news program. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Sainabou, for tonight back.
Kiang Mansa mfele ndunta abela mwekang na radio bumbala konka mfutandale watu binkana wake wajaninko ke fonsi molu tentu anin kafulu meni ya lonko ikansembentu ya watu ndunda media na fan club polu membe Gambia mbebe tentu ya duku kendola anina duku la membe Gambia bantala mafulebe ala baraka bake ala duku kendola badi ngulu semenke trong ngadun kibaro nyimfa kono na Gambia news being a memsoto walen mulmen wosita me kibaro ko folo futandalma men wosita kafuta la sateto ko ni watulu ye ngataw soto me ya lonko ye molu men ye fantolo ke committee nyaton ko luti ko ni watulu ye samanale ko be manyanyi menna anin luwanyi manta kibar bunda men safe wala Mamos la media te anun kibaro men fana ba futandala bi UDP ikoye lawyer Usainu Dabo ya tomo na kotake pour ka kela pati nyaton koti ana telbe kela president candidate to nyin katre fe memina 2021 sango nyin kono iko nyin kono ye molu me ya lonko wala lo nyanta ke delegate United Democratic Party nyinto insibi tamla ye molu kumandi fana jamalu menu nata ibe kampenta ka Usainu Dabo ka ke patila secretary general ti anandele kanan kada kapo patila nyaton koti anu iko aya palaso nyi mankanin iko pruka ke president candidate ni kate finala kula me ya lonko asototale Mamos la kibar bunda point la kibar bunda wole ngin safe mbaringulu Usainu ya fofanan ko min kate finala ay kachaluke anu iba fofanan ko ni meya lonko angununo be kerin ka foko pati ni lefta ka janjang ka pati dolo wara modu fanalo membe lefla ka palaso nyinta iko kula meya lonko diam kensolen amanke ku sotorende kibar bunda men safe wala mu point la newspaper ti mbadi mun semen ketro ngadun kibaro nyim fango kungo kono iko moya lonko sate dingulu men mo kafuta la sate nyinto iko nyi watolu ye mulu samana men ya lonko woleliye ikfanke ila sate nyina nyaton koti membe kafuta membe Kombo East Central tundo nyina ni arjwa tambila ye samana police station membe ila tundo nyinto iko ye samana dalilo men kam wala mu ye manyal leke men ya lonko anin kafonyi na anin luwanyi men data pruka kafonyi samba e kan wo luwal nyunu manta e ko nyumen samana ronyinke ye samana mandina ba la police station o nyinto anin nyumol mbe la wosi danyinkela yake ko e ko men na kafuta la sate nyinto e ko ye molu men ya lonko wolelbe nyin dulanyinto wala palaso nyinto ye fanne tolo nyin lanto ye fanne tombon ayatra e manta kafonyin waran luwanyi men lota me ya la section kema fula tan kononto anin fula me ya itandi la ko ye mayanyi menke anin silonyi manta e luwanyi tinyale e ko nyin diamo nyi metale be nyin kala kulula ani kulula nyamen birin keta andi nata sude fanan ko kafonyin wara sate nyin na kodo nyin e bole tinya kan e ko nyin mol men ya lonko yetume ye fanne tombon keke kafuta la sate nyaton ko nyinti birin 2007 saw nyin kono atra e manka fo nyin batum pour sato be ben e pour ya e ka tolo nyon min ke pour ya ke wala bari tolko al kalo nyin wala tolta ke tombon anin sade kebalo pour keke en place o nyinto ayatra luwanyi men lota ala section tan kono den sabanjango way men fo local la masakunda ndungla luwalu way men fo iye nyaka su wala le kibar bunda men safe wala mu Mamos la media te iko United Democratic Party menketa UDP ti iko be bambuta purka nyen carte finala wara nyen president carte finala purka ila party nyaton ko tombong me yalon ko wala be kelela party nyinen wala be kala la president candidate iko nyim mol me yalon ko tundolu men be Gambia la mafonla ibe findita purka na ila nyi bembate menken sibili tambila andum wojama findita ibena da kamben ka honorable Usainu Dabo pura ke party nyina secretary general ti ani party la nyaton kolu andu in ay la fome yitandi pour que president candidate in carte final la Michael 2021 sango nyin kono ikola delegate ka fonyi meni ya lonko ela molu tombon men tata fo mo wilkiling mo taworo ya be bondi men nada fo o kabol kono kafu ye muang fintindi pour que isamana pour que la fo yitandi ila tajuma la tombona ani nena tundul menta fo tawor talulu ni saba nyun be ila mul fintindi le inata pour que la fo yitandi ila fta pour me que la patinya ton koti an wala be que le president candidate do ni carte finala ani benara kamben ye motombo men que honorable Usainu Dabo ko ya tel tombon atel mo pati la nyaton koti an atel be que la president candidate te ni sanji flo ni men kana iko ya sayndi ka telebe nunje anu say inata ateleton bon ka continue abe place on markan ya meeting ba nyinke Paradise Suite Hotel on yineto iko nuno me kekan ka foko mol sotota me alon ko ol fana be lafri nyindula nyina ya jiki kabe ka fonyin aba janjandi lale bari ko be keta kutu me alon ko amanna ke kuso farinte birinata Usenu Dabo tombon ka kela pati nyaton koti wo nuno men ke wol be fatale kibar bunda men safe wala mo point la newspaper team anumata Usenu Dabo biringa aya tombong anata kacha nyinke ako nyimbekela baro e tasteleti burunga be birabe kacha nyinke kanyin arjuma tambila ako yinatu nyimenke datu United Democratic Party la nyaton koti honorable Usenu Dabo ako na ya kenyun blando ka party secretary general ti pour nyin carte finala nyimbekela baro taman serolti ani nyimbekela kutume yalon ka bekela referendum molti pour ka taste ka joko abe tinyaro nyimmen kekan anaba kulu nyimmen lakan ka banko doku me alon ko aya sembo sotle bara maka nyama na bidanga yo wato nyin soto abe ko men kekan anin silo nyimmanta ana banko nyin tinya kan akonye mbekela tastelti alala Mansa kunda me ya lonko ibe kodo nyin tinya kan ani ye ferul labulu melandi fenna me ya lonko femmantra ta kama abe banko nyin janjande kana abe banko nyin abatala kan temale ana be muldun kan nyotole akobe nyin kacha nyin menke kan nyin simo damma mo dantandro nene no ka fo lafta ferul menkela pour ka continue be tinyaro nyin menke kan me ya lonko wala mula semboti kan dutele femfenke ibe menke kan ni watula amantra ta kan abe tinya kanne ata Dabo anyim fo mo men hapo benta nyim bintin blata ta fo mo wulikle nyong me yalon ko biba tolo kan wala biba tomba kan ni be ma beta ila nyim bembato kibar bunda men safe wala mo standard la newspaper de badu mo nyino kibaro mi frata metemmen na pour ka futan dalma na beta to ko man solo no la ninga fo ma fo kun soundal salo na harbe yana so damalamo annal badi malam ni malan dol kay kiyama samba flani mbara fo nyato ndo
Njie, Honorable Pa Assan Badjan, BEM, CEO Lamin Marong, known as Kiang, and Mr. Dabo, our Country Director and Marketing Manager in the Gambia. Also to our Mamos News Desk, Chief Editor Mr. Suleiman Dabo, News Editor Lamin Sanyang, Mamos reporters on tonight's news review, Usman Marong and ML Bojang. Special thank you to the NENEH Fans Club. Thank you, listeners, once again. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. GMT. On that note, we say good night and bye.
Mamos.